Hello everyone and welcome to this afternoon's event. I'm Sophie Fuggle, one of the directors of the Centre for the Study of Inequality, Culture and Difference at Nottingham Trent University. We're delighted to be hosting our first YouTube livestream event celebrating diverse heritage with curator Norma Gregory, who will be talking about the Digging Deep Black Miners Heritage Project. The Centre for the Study of Inequality, Culture and Difference brings together research looking at how the representation, practice and experience of difference produce different forms of inequality. Our work seeks to better representation, practices and experiences are both contested and reproduced, and how they inform discriminatory practices and policies. You can find more out about the work of the Centre and our upcoming events by visiting our blog, the link to which can be found on our YouTube channel homepage. So before I hand over to Charlie Prattley, who is hosting the event today, I'd just like to invite you to post any questions or comments that you might have for Norma in the YouTube chat. Our moderator, Alex, will pass these on to us and we'll make sure that there's time at the end for plenty of discussion and reflection. The event should last about an hour in total and we'll leave about 10 to 15 minutes at the end dedicated to questions and discussion. So allow me now to introduce today's host. Charlie Prattley is a lecturer in museum studies, teaching predominantly on the NTU Museum and Heritage Development MA. Since joining NTU from her role as co-founder and director of a heritage consultancy, she's been working with colleagues on the steering group for the Centre for the Study of Inequality, Culture and Difference, as well as maintaining her practice to support heritage organisations. To date, she has gained almost £250,000 in funding for arts and heritage organisations, delivering and overseeing over 80 projects to engage audiences and develop strategic activities. Over the last 2 years, she's been working with multiple partners of Miner2Major's National Lottery Heritage Fund project to establish a strategy and action plan for Sherwood Forest. So Charlie, it's over to you.
Thanks, Sophie. So central to Sherwood Forest's interpretation strategy is the ambition to support local organisations in diversifying Sherwood Forest narratives. So historically, the area is much larger than many people realise. So it stretches from historically Nottingham Castle to Columba Park with slightly ill-defined edges that we've been grappling with, meaning it's got much greater relevance to many local people, businesses and heritage organisations. There are lots of opportunities to collate and celebrate much wider narratives. So we've established 7 key interpretation themes, including things like deep time and space to promote a sense of awe at the forces that have created Sherwood Forest's characteristic sandstone. Sherwood Forest is home to encourage residents to view their own stories as part of the area's continued heritage. Sherwood Forest is resource to explore how industry has shaped the land, whether that's through large-scale initiatives such as mining or further back in history with important product creation with a global reach such as the ink ghoul that was allegedly used under Magna Carta, or timber that was gifted for building repairs of the ruling elite across the country. The theme Free Thinking Sherwood gives space to explore inspiration, innovation and storytelling with connections to, for example, Ada Lovelace, the original computer programmer, Thomas Hawksley, civil engineer and clean water pioneer, Helen Creswell, a dearly loved children's author, and of course Robin Hood in there as well. So I began my part in the Miner2Major project with an audit of interpretation in Sherwood Forest, both on-site and digital. And it really quickly became apparent that more needed to be done across the region to showcase the stories of women, children and diverse communities. So I was really delighted to hear about Norma Gregory's work with black miners across the UK. We began working together at Bilsthorpe Heritage Museum to support them in diversifying their presentation of 1,000 years of Bilsthorpe history. And Norma's deep connections to the black mining community and her experience in sharing diverse histories really quickly became apparent. So it's great to have her here for an opportunity to learn even more about her practice today. Now, Norma began her career as a secondary school teacher and a mentor before working as a historian and director of Nottingham News Centre CIC. And until recently, there was very little documented about black miners in the UK. She set out to change this with her Digging Deep Black Miners Heritage project at the Black Miners Museum by collecting the experiences and contribution of black miners' history from the 19th century to 2015 within the cultural landscape of British social and industrial history, when the last deep coal mine in Britain closed. So her research really aims to challenge perspectives of industrial labour histories and actively encourages urgent movement towards embracing multiculturally rich, diverse perspectives, new voices and fresh horizons across the extensive and unique landscape of UK industrial heritage. Her work is being shared across the UK in collaboration with partners such as the National Coal Mining Museum for England, Durham Mining Museum and closer to home in Nottinghamshire, Nottingham Industrial Museum. She's worked with really exciting people such as the glass artist Stella Chadwick to produce beautiful stained glass windows, and has trained volunteers to diversify heritage. So I think I personally feel we could learn a lot from you, Norma. So I'm really excited to hand over to you today.
Lovely, thank you, Charlie. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you, Nottingham University, for hosting this event. So today I really want to share with you my journey within the heritage sector, my life in Nottingham, in the UK, as a woman of African Caribbean heritage, born here. I really want to share my practice and some of the things I've learnt and some of the challenges I've had to face and overcome, and also the future, talking about the legacy, what next for industrial heritage, and how we can kind of work together and think about partnerships in the future. So these are just this is some of the overview, some of the topics I'll just cover. Obviously my experience and the challenges, my work as a historian, the Black Miners Museum, how that started, which have since been knocked down in Nottingham, but a lot of the West Indian community lived here when they first came, and life was very difficult. It was only my mum who insisted that she was not going to be living in this type of property, and we moved to the borough of Gedling, where I live now, very near Gedling Colliery. So this was just a starting point, but again, we were lucky enough to kind of have a chance to progress and move to slightly better living arrangements. This picture I found on Facebook, and I have tried to find the source, the person who owned the photograph, but I've put a credit, and if this belongs to anybody, let me know. But this is a photo of me at school, and I wanted to just put this in because it just showed how diverse my class was. I mean, I was literally the only person of African heritage in the photo, and there's only 2 or 3 black people in my school, primary school, when we first moved to Mapley in 1976. So I always felt a bit of an outsider in the classroom, but I thought, I didn't let it get to me too much, but it was always on my mind with the fact that, why was I the only one in the classroom? Like, I was different, but we all got many things in common. So just questions of identity were quite strong in me from a young age. So this brings me on to what I do now, which is research essentially into industrial heritage. As like I said before, my own heritage, my own family history, my relatives, a miner. My father worked in the iron industry in Nottingham, and I started to look into industrial workers, and particularly miners. I was asked by Dr. David Amos now. He's a very prominent mining historian in Nottinghamshire. He said, what else do you know about miners, black miners in particular? And I said to him at the time, this was about 2012, 13. I said, I don't know that much. I only know I've got a relative in the family. And but he said, you need to look into that a bit more. And I says, okay, all right, I will. So he actually initiated my research into miners of African Caribbean heritage who worked in coal mines in the UK. And these are just some of the questions that people asked me along my research journey, and some of the questions that I asked myself in order to research and find the answers out. So just some of the questions were, where are black miners? Who are they? How have they contributed to the UK economy, and how are they to remembered? The picture on the left was a picture donated by a member of the public. Her father was a miner, and I just thought this photo was brilliant in that it was when I started my research, I found very few images or references to miners of any nationality at all. So this picture was really crucial to my research, and I actually cried when I saw it for the first time, because I was so happy and so so enjoy to see this picture. And that the fact that he's holding a shot firer's bag in his hand here on the left, that showed he was a deputy, putting sticks of dynamite in the rock. So that was quite a senior role. And he's got his water canister and his snap tin, his lunch metal container there. So that was a really fabulous picture here. But it told me a lot about mining history. So I just want, this slide here just talks about the legacy and the importance of research, and why I did my research was many of these points here, which is to understand more about identity and healing, because I found that not knowing about the past, or not knowing about my contribution, my family's contribution, and my community's contribution to the world was like a piece missing in a jigsaw. And research, finding out and asking questions helps to heal, helps us to kind of make sense of the world. Also through this research, I've been able to work with absolutely brilliant partners and brilliant companies and organisations, different museums, to help them think differently, do things differently, because sometimes in the heritage sector we can sometimes get in a rut and do the same thing over and over again because it works. But I think we need to take ourselves out of our comfort zone and try something different, even if it means less funding or a risk, taking a risk of some kind. But it's worth it, because if you can bring new people into the museum or into your space, that is the learning that we want, that shared knowledge. This picture here was another important picture kindly shared by the National Coal Mining Museum. This picture here shows a group of colliery officials, but in the middle towards the back there's a picture of a black man here, a man of African heritage, possibly owning a mine, because before 1947, January the 1st, 1947, all coal mines were owned by families or individuals until nationalisation in 1947. So this picture is a really important one again, that showed a man of African heritage owning or having some senior role within a colliery. So this again was another important picture that defined the black presence in industrial history, in mining history. And it wasn't that I mean, many of the miners, a lot of the miners that I've spoken to said they were coal-face workers and had very difficult jobs, but my research shows that they also had senior jobs as well. So, but it only, my research showed that. It wasn't given to me at any stage. I had to look into it. This picture here shows the black presence on coal mine colliery banners. So banners are large, almost 4 metre square, beautiful works of art that each coal mine had, that represented their mission or their kind of ethos, or what they were about. So these are just two, but there are many hundreds. And if you actually go to the Durham Miners Gala, which I went to 2 weeks ago on Saturday the 9th of July, you would have seen most of these banners on display in Durham, and they're absolutely magnificent sight. That's all I can say when you actually see all these banners on display. But these two here show pictures with referring to diversity within the workforce, the different colours of the men on the banner. Another important primary source data, which again wasn't shared or wasn't known about until I looked into this and got help from from various archives around the country. Especially, I want to give a big thank you to Wales Miners Library in Wales, in Swansea. They were absolutely brilliant as well in helping me. The National Coal Mining Museum, I've talked about partnership as well. I mean, one of the successes of my research as a historian and a curator is working in partnership with other people, other people and other organisations who have the same mission, which is to work to educate everybody and to allow access for everybody. So those are the kind of things, when I work in partnership, they're the things I want to see from my partner, that kind of willingness to open up and to share and to allow, like the National Coal Mining Museum, for me, they've been absolutely fantastic partner. I've known them, worked in partnership with them since around 2014, and we hosted the Digging Deep exhibition there for 6 months. It was originally for 3 months, but they extended it to 6 months in 2019, just before lockdown. We just finished the exhibition March the 8th, 2020. So this picture here just shows some of the people that came, the public who came to view the exhibition, to learn about diversity within the mining sector, mining industry. Just a couple more banners here, Welsh banners that feature black miners on them again. And this is the front cover of a book by David Bell, with the black miner in the shot here at the back, and I managed to interview his son. This miner has died since, and that's another reason why I did my research, was to ensure that as many of their experiences were recorded. They were interviewed with permission, obviously, and their photos taken with permission, and they shared a lot of their own personal images with the Black Miners Museum now, which I've set up, which is a collection of all their interviews, many artifacts, artwork we've had commissioned, which I'll talk about in a moment, and books and resources. So again, our archive is about sharing with universities, with organisations who want to know more, and the public as well, through our website blackcoalminers.com. This slide here just lists some of the collieries that had black miners miners of African Caribbean heritage, working at them. They're all, obviously, since 2015 there aren't any more deep coal mines in the UK, but this list again did not exist until I looked into this topic and started to list and produce a database of all the mines where we now know that they had at least one. There were many black miners, especially at Gedling in Nottinghamshire and in Yorkshire as well, Yorkshire mines as well. But yeah, the main areas where I've discovered so far, Nottinghamshire, Yorkshire, Wales and Durham. But there are some areas which I've still yet to do more research, which is Derbyshire and southern England, Kent area as well. Before we get towards the end, just ways of engaging with history now. I think it's very important to get out into the community, to talk to people, especially historians, but not just historians, talk to people, the public, people with miners in their family. I get a lot of emails from the public, from students, from family members, for instance, from families where the miner has died and the family wants to share a photograph, put one of their photographs in the Black Miners Museum in our collection, or just to find out what I know about the colliery where their father or grandfather worked at. So that's a lot of the work we do now, which is community engagement. So as well as going out into the community, doing talks, taking artifacts, handling, letting young people, before COVID that was, that people did a lot of handling of the objects, but obviously not so much now, as we're not allowed to share too much with these artifacts. We've been able to work with the BBC quite a lot. Obviously Nottingham News Centre, my company I set up in 2013, following my journalism background and life in schools, in education. I always think work with television whenever you get an opportunity, because it's an absolutely brilliant way of sharing your research to a massive global audience. And this is one of the programmes I helped to produce with Cardiff Productions, Gary Young and his team, Wales Black Miners. It was on air for over, I think, about 14 months it was on air, and it had very good comments and good reviews and stuff. So this was one programme, as well as we've worked with Bargain Hunt, we've worked with Inside Out when that was on, and other programmes we've been able to provide consultancy for, sharing photographs and and audio and video and so forth. Just a few more images now of our outreach work, exhibitions, doing talks all over the country now, and doing young people artwork projects. And miners reunions. We've had 2 reunions with former miners. This one was in 2018. We were lucky enough, Channel 4 News, they came and put it, it was recorded as a piece for the news, because it was around the time of the Windrush scandal, 2018, and they came, Channel 4 came to speak to the miners about their experiences. And a lot of them spoke up about their injustices they'd experienced, which was really important for them to have a voice around that. So I was pleased to put that event on, and one again earlier in 2016 at the Afro-Caribbean Centre in Nottingham. Other ways we've been able to ensure the legacy of the miners' experience and stories is being part of newspaper articles with The Voice. That's the Voice newspaper at the bottom here, and trips for the miners to see the Gedling Colliery banner, which many of them hadn't seen before. So I organised a trip for them to see that. And more photos here showing the Durham Miners' Gala. That was the one I was at last week, at the bottom left picture here. And the exhibition, Digging Deep exhibition, which is still on tour. We've been able to work, as Charlie mentioned before, we've been able to work with fantastic artists. Honey Williams, we worked with her. She worked with our volunteers to produce a painting. And we've worked with Stella Chadwick, a glassmaker, glass designer, contemporary glassmaker, to produce a stained glass window featuring a black miner on it, with information of what type of things are mined today, such as copper, diamonds, cobalt, and countries where mining still takes place. So this is an important artifact that we've got now, that we can take to schools, take to universities, and different galleries, such as the mining gallery, Miners Art Gallery in Bishop Auckland in Durham. So we've been able to create art through this research, because I just don't believe that research should be purely written. I think it should be interpreted into new ways, such as art, such as painting, such as poetry, such as writing, such as whatever it is. It just needs to be kind of reshaped so people can engage with it, and people can have a hand in it, literally have a hand for taking photographs of it, like this young person here, or just listening or helping to make it, you know what I mean? So that's the kind of thing I like to do as a curator as well. So it's co-curating art through history. This slide here just shows our visits from the High Commissioner of Jamaica. He came to explore the exhibition because he didn't know a lot about the black miners' history, and he took his knowledge, what he experienced. He then told me he shared it with CARICOM, which is the Caribbean kind of United Nations of the Caribbean. They've got their own kind of forum, and he actually shared his experience at one of the meetings there. So I was really pleased that we're kind of reaching out to other countries, sharing this history and getting them to think about how they're going to preserve the history in their own regions. We've been able to make a film, Digging Deep film, which has been shown and we've won a couple of small film festivals. So that's been a really good way of sharing history. And poetry, we've had people write poems about what they've learnt, and we've been able to display them in our exhibitions. So the future, what are we doing? So I've put here my heritage education in tray. So these are things that I'm working on. Nottingham News Centre, my company's working on, and one of them is we're working, like Charlie said, with the Major to Minor project, brilliant project that's been going to improve everyone global understanding about the importance of our region and the Sherwood Forest area. And my role specifically is working closely with Bilsthorpe Mining Museum, helping them to interpret some of their history, and to also support their work. They've actually got this weekend coming. They're part of the Newark Book Festival, which we've got stalls, and we've got loads of activities happening at the Bilsthorpe Mining Museum this weekend on 23rd, 24th of July. We are continuing, obviously, the exhibition. The exhibition is still in demand. I can't believe it. We started showing content around 2017-18, and it's 2022, and we're still going. So I think that's brilliant, because people want to know more and they want to learn more, and they are free to ask questions, which we always promote that dialogue. We are writing a help guide. So basically all the work we've done and what we've learned and some of the challenges we've faced, we're writing that up as a help guide so we can share that resource with museums in the future. And continuing consultancy services with, like I said, with organisations who want to diversify their collections, and we provide staff training as well to organisations who want to help educate their staff and just help them think about creating a more inclusive space. We're seeking museum accreditation for the Black Miners archive that we have. I think that's important. If we could get that accreditation, it will take a few years, but it's something that we need to work towards, because we do have a museum. We don't have a physical building, nor do we actually want a physical building. We have a collection that is a museum. We are going to improve our online presence by creating more of a virtual space for the collection that we've got, in order that we reach further. People in Australia, people in Japan and China can see our content and share heritage. And I put there to stay happy and healthy, because I think health is important, and being happy and enjoying history and enjoying heritage. I think that's been one of the keys to success in my career as a historian. So thank you for sharing, and I welcome any thoughts, questions posed from you out there. So thank you.
Thank you, Norma. That was absolutely fascinating, and it was so good to see just the wealth of information you've collected. The banners and the images are just absolutely stunning, and they've really made me think about the mining history that I've been looking at in a very different way, much more visually, I think, than I'd appreciated before. So yes, as Norma says, please do pop your comments, questions, anything like that on the YouTube comments. And while we're waiting for anyone to chime in, I've got loads of questions, Norma. I must pick your brains afterwards as well. But one thing that really strikes me about your work is this really genuine nature of the relationships you've got with the miners. You talk about your own history in terms of the heritage that's represented in schools, your mining history in your family, and even how you've attended the miners' funerals at the request of their families. I know we were talking about you've read a eulogy at one recently, and also this kind of sensitivity around this silence from relatives, and it kind of echoes what some people feel their granddads and their grandparents went through in World War, for example. But that kind of silence about not speaking about difficult histories, or as a child or even an adult child, you've got sort of difficulties to overcome in actually asking those questions about relatives. And one thing that we've previously talked about as well is these sensitivities in terms of actually sharing the stories once we kind of collect them, and that risk that communities' times could be seen as a commodity. So as the museum sector realises they have to engage with more diverse narratives, they realise they're quite behind on this as a topic. There's that risk that communities could be potentially exploited or not engaged with properly. So I'm really interested to know how you manage those relationships to ensure that you as a practitioner and other people are co-producing resources ethically with communities, but also from a sort of work-life balance as well, because you do so much with your communities and you do so much with individual people. That must take quite a lot of work and time as well.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think being part of being part of communities, different communities. I'm not just in the Afro-Caribbean community. I'm in women's groups. I'm in business groups. I put myself within different communities that I share and learn from different people doing different things. So that's what I do first of all. So I get a kind of rounded knowledge base. And I think that, sharing with the community, talking to the community sincerely, that's been very helpful and beneficial. And also, I think the Black community, they knew my father, they knew my family, so that was helpful in that they had a bit of like, for instance, when I was interviewing the miners, I got permission forms signed by all of them before I did the interview, and talked to them first about what I was trying to do, what I was trying to understand, that I didn't know about their background, their job. I explained my kind of pain, so they got to understand and relate to that, and that helped me how I got them to speak, because I found that my parents' generation, they like you mentioned and I mentioned before, they don't talk a lot. They don't talk about pain a lot. Sometimes people brush things under the carpet and just almost pretend that everything's okay, or sometimes, like, my mother will say, this is the best country and this has been great, and I'll be like, really? Thinking, it's really difficult, life has been hard, but perhaps. And then I think, actually, her journey is not my journey, and her childhood was not my childhood. So I kind of try to just always, try. You can never put yourself in somebody else's shoes fully, but you do have to be understanding and to listen a lot, and don't judge, because, like I said, their journey is not mine. I don't know what happened to them before they came to England. It would have been and actually I asked them about that in the interviews I've done, the oral history interviews I've done. I asked all the miners what was life like in Jamaica before you came, or in Ghana before you came to the UK. And yeah, it was challenging, but a lot of them also said that they weren't necessarily from poor families, you know what I mean? Because people assume migrants coming to this country are poor and homeless, and that was not the case. That I need to do. I've got a whiteboard here on the wall that lists all my jobs that I've got to do, and I just get on with them. Really, I do get on with it, because I just know that this is part of my life's legacy as well. The work I'm doing now is what I want to leave behind. I want the security of these stories embedded long term, not the short term. I don't want it that 1 year, 2 years time it's forgotten about. I want it embedded in media, that it stays within the BBC archive collection. I want it embedded in books, that it stays on the bookshelf of every bookshop. So that's what I'm looking for, that kind of permanency with history, that we're not just the page in history and it's turned over and forgotten about. We are part of the national story, and we are here to stay, in that we have our ancestors have worked centuries and centuries of hard labour, and if it wasn't for their efforts and toil and their survival, that I wouldn't be here. So I'm always conscious of that as well. My ancestors, their journey, and difficult journey, but they managed to survive and be resilient and have strength. So I think about that and think, right, if they can do it, I can do it. So that's what keeps me going.
And that sense of identity is really, really strong through your work. I think, giving young people that sense of identity about their history and where they've come from, and that, history does need to change in how it's taught in schools. It's such an important thing. We've got quarter of an hour. I've got a question about young people, and then I can bring in Sophie's questions as well, if that's all right, Sophie.
Yes.
Yeah, and so when I was thinking about young people and this kind of, how do we engage young people with these stories about coal mining? Because there's such a material quality to mining heritage. The heavy equipment, the headstocks, the way it's so radically altered the landscape. Even like the feel and smell of coal. They always say children don't know what coal feels like. And also that kind of physical nature of the work on people's bodies that might be a really difficult concept for kids to engage with, or people who haven't done a manual job before. It's a very alien concept. And I can see from your Black Miners Museum book, which is brilliant. If anybody wants to check that out and have a look at Norma's website, there's a lot of good stuff on there. I can see that you've taken families underground for tours to kind of really engage with that physical aspect of mining. You've worked with artists. Like you say, you're using the creative arts to kind of engage young people. But I wanted to know a little bit more. I wonder if you could sort of expand on how you see your work with young people and how you engage them with that physical nature of objects or coal mining.
Well, thank you. What we're trying to do in the next phase of our work, the next few years ahead, is to work with technology a bit more. So, for instance, we want to the images that we've got, the archive images and the contemporary images, we want to make them more interactive, more engaging. I went on a course recently with the East Midlands Business Chamber, and it was all about technology, how to use technology in your business, and some of the kind of equipment and ideas are just amazing. So I'm just trying to think how we can, how do you bring a coal mine alive? How can you use imaging, and how can you use 3D imaging and holograms and all the kind of gadgets to make industrial heritage come alive and be interesting. So that's an avenue that I'm exploring for the near, I would say, the next 3 to 5 years. But the issue with that is technology is always changing very quickly, and the cost, it can be quite a lot of money. But I think it's good to experiment and to just see what you can do. Like, for instance, we worked with a designer to make coal jewellery and to make sculptures with coal. They're only prototypes, but when they were shown at the National Coal Mining Museum, the young people in particular were really interested in the necklaces and the jewellery, because I love earrings and things, but they were really interested. They asked, can we buy this? And I was like, no, not at the moment, because these are just prototypes. We're just trying to show what can be done with pieces of coal, what beauty can be made with them. So that's what we're trying to do, is experiment with coal, and to make new designs or new products. That's and I think that's a way of getting young people to think about technology, to think about science, to think about art and design, getting them to make things that, back to the participation, taking part. It is hard getting young people into mining history, but like you mentioned, it's been how I've done it in the past has been organising trips, local trips, such as to Bilsthorpe Mining Museum. We've organised coach trips, and obviously to the National Coal Mining Museum. But I think it's going to be over time, and it's creating new ways of engaging with them through social media. It's got to be TikTok. We've got to do stuff on TikTok, which I've never done anything on TikTok, but we've got to, because that's where a lot of young people are. And other social media platforms, you know what I mean, which young people specifically go to. They don't necessarily go to Facebook like I go to Facebook or LinkedIn as much. They're going to others, new ones that I've not even heard of, which my daughter told me about the other day, but that's where they're all talking. So it's almost, we've got to put ourselves into their kind of dialogue streams, which is uncomfortable, such as for me, it's a bit uncomfortable in that it's new to me, but some of it's new to me, but that's where we got to go to reach them, I think. Because that's where they are.
Taking heritage to them, isn't it?
It is very much.
What those examples really highlight, I think, is there's just these wonderful discrepancies in coal mining heritage, isn't there? With the mining for a really wealthy product when you were talking about copper or cobalt or diamonds, and the wealth inequalities that it creates, and the kind of physical nature of coal versus the kind of beautiful nature of jewelry. And there's a lot of different kind of clashing aspects going on. And one of the concepts that I really love about mining heritage is this kind of revealing of this entanglement of deep time, culture, infrastructure, geology. By digging up fossil fuels, we've kind of disrupted all these layers of history and the earth and archaeology, and we've radically altered society and not least the environment. And we've got a colleague, Professor Mike Robinson, who is, to paraphrase him, he says, what happens if we reframe coal mining narratives as not the birthplace of the factory or the birthplace of a coal mine, but it's the origins of global warming. And those kind of conversations seem really important to have with young people when we think about how that relationship with coal mining will change.
Well, coal, to say coal is the origins of global warming is partly correct, but it's also, one must also say that coal is the origins of life itself, and coal will be around for the rest of life itself. It will always be around, but it's how humans use it or not. It will always be a resource that will always be used in the world. It really will. So, and global warming is a factor, a real factor, as we all know, with this heat that we've had, in the recent days. But how do we address that, and how can coal shape things for the future? If not coal, other things are mined, such as lithium in the electric cars and in our mobile phones and our computers. There's other things, minerals that are mined and used. So if it's not coal, it's going to be something else. So I think the bigger picture is how we humans are consuming, how we are consumers. We are the problem with global warming. It's not the coal. It's the fact that we want things all the time. Humans want phones, humans want clothes, humans want excessive food and so forth. So I think it's unfair to blame coal for global warming, but I think it's more about our consumption, how we're consuming things, how people want to go on social media on their phone. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, where were phones? There weren't that many phones around, but now every single person's got a phone. Every single person's got a computer, at least one or two or three. So I think that's the challenge that we need to address, rather than blame coal, the mineral, the rock. You can't blame coal. You got to blame human life, greed, consumerism. That's also to be looked at.
And that very eloquently leads us on to Sophie's questions, actually, that when we think about those kind of global connections with coal and the wider kind of mining industry and things. So Sophie, I know you've got a couple of questions on there. I can read them out if your throat's still groggy. Okay. So Sophie has asked, so as well as Jamaica, where in the Caribbean did black miners tend to come from? And has it been possible so far to make connections with heritage organisations focused on mining history in the Caribbean or elsewhere?
Yeah, thank you. Good question. Yes, well, gosh, in the Caribbean, there's a whole list. Antigua, Barbados, many St. Kitts, many countries. So, for instance, Gedling Colliery, they've actually got a few years ago, they put up a mosaic on the wall on the site with 30, I think at least 30 different countries, the flags of 30 different countries that worked at Gedling Colliery alone. So I would say most of the Caribbean islands, I've been able to find black miners with links to those countries. And yes, Nigeria, Ghana, a lot of Indian, and not just African and Caribbean. There's Polish, Ukrainian, Eastern European a lot of communities mined from those countries in the UK, were miners. So it's a bigger picture than we thought. But our research, we've been able to add evidence to the story of diverse Britain, multicultural Britain. This is a chapter of British history, but we've been able to add to that story because I think that until we looked at this topic, nothing much was said or nothing much was shared about diversity within industry. And it's still, most industries have a diverse workforce, but why isn't it mentioned or celebrated? That's the issue. But my work is evidence and proven that we have made a massive contribution to industry and still do.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that was kind of an eye-opener for me working with you on the Bilsthorpe Mining Museum project, 1,000 Years of Bilsthorpe History, and that there was a lack of understanding about the black miners in their community, and it was kind of, oh yeah, we think there's something in there, but we need to kind of dig deeper, and it's supporting those organisations to have the time and the resources and the skills to really celebrate and reveal those histories. And that's why it's been really fantastic to have you on board for that project. And it's shocking that work as an industry in the museum industry hasn't been done already. When you were saying that's the first collation of a list of black miners in museums in mines in the UK, that's quite shocking. And so what's kind of next for you? You've got you've obviously got a huge project on your belt to share all this wonderful research, and you've got your to-do list. You've got your strategy. Your focus.
Yeah.
What are you kind of most excited about on that list?
Oh gosh. Well, it's the help guide, getting that together, and hopefully what we want to do is start training new consultants to help them support the museum sector. So that's something we are planning to kind of branch out on. And still, to be honest, they're all exciting. There isn't anything that stands out too much. They're all really important. But they're all in progress, and they all will be done.
Yeah, and
they all will be done.
I know you.
Hopefully.
But the help guide seems like a really, really positive thing for the industry, and having that that kind of almost spiraling influence, so that you can, like you say, train other people. Is that something you kind of learnt from when you were training volunteers in the Black Miners Project? Yeah,
definitely. And I think that's really my educational background, having worked in schools in London and Nottingham, having been a teacher, an English and media teacher in secondary schools. I understand the value of education and actually facilitating education, being part of change, not relying on other people to kind of do it all, or relying on teachers to do it all, because it's not fair on them to have to educate all the time. It's also for us to take a part in that and help in our own way. I might not teach in the classroom anymore, but I can go into a classroom and teach. I'm a qualified teacher. I can do talks in community centres. I can do talks online, which I've been doing for many years. So I think, again, just making myself adaptable and changeable. Obviously, the COVID period was the opportunity. I saw it as a great opportunity to get out there and online more. Because before COVID, I was literally living on the trains, traveling to different museums, traveling to different organisations, and I didn't get so much time to do my work, what I needed to do. So actually, it's been quite beneficial to have that time now to stop, reflect, share, and go forward in a healthier way, a much healthier way for me.
And yeah, as practitioners and as consultants, I think it's very easy to try and do everything yourself, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I think that methodology makes a lot of sense, particularly with everybody taking responsibility for equality and diversity as well. So we've come to 3:00. So that's all we have time for. So a huge thank you to Norma for sharing your inspiring work with us. I feel like I've got lots of interesting ideas from that, especially with, the global connections with coal and where it can go next in a conversation with young people, and not least those beautiful banners and photographs. So thank you very much. And thank you to everyone who has tuned in. We do have plans for more seminars in this series. So as they say, please like and subscribe to the Centre YouTube channel. And we hope to see you again for the next one.